views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hello and welcome to Open BxRx, BronxNet's special coverage providing you the latest information that matters to you during COVID-19, the coronavirus, and now through social justice actions and civil unrest taking place nationwide and here in the Bronx. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, and today is Tuesday, August 25th. Coming up, what does Biden-Harris mean for the Bronx? Councilmember Vanessa Gibson joins us to discuss the upcoming presidential election and more. Then, we'll catch up with Hawk and Chivona Newsome of the Black Lives Matter Greater New York movement to learn how they continue to assist, build, and empower Black communities in our city. After that, the MORE Caucus joins us to discuss upcoming school reopenings and their health justice agenda. And we'll learn more about the Educational Video Center, Youth Filmmakers, and their upcoming Docs and Dialogue series. So please, stick around. Open BxRx starts now. Welcome back to Open BxRx on BronxNet. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, inviting you to get social with us at BronxNet TV on Instagram and Twitter, and BronxNet Community Television on Facebook. Presidential candidate Joe Biden has selected Kamala Harris as his VP, making her the first Black woman and the first Asian American woman to be chosen as a major party's vice presidential candidate. What does the Biden-Harris ticket mean for the Bronx in November's elections? Joining us now to discuss her district, upcoming elections, and more, we have Councilmember Vanessa Gibson. Thank you so much for joining us today, Councilmember.
Thanks so much. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. So first and foremost, just to start, can you please give us an update on your district and the work that you've been doing there lately through pantries, community cleanups, and more? What are the people asking for most?
So I think that people are asking for a lot. I think the COVID-19 pandemic has hit the Bronx like never before. We've lost thousands of New Yorkers to this deadly disease, and a lot of Bronx residents lost their battle to COVID-19. So since March, we've been working with organizations like Food Bank, as well as Fresh Direct, Common Pantry, Eat Clean Bro, so many others giving out food at food distributions, as well as hand sanitizer, face masks to residents and families. We've been working with the administration on opening new COVID-19 testing sites. We have one at Gotham, Morrisania on Girard Avenue, as well as mobile pop-up sites. We have a mobile health facility at River Park Towers that's being utilized by Morris Heights Health Center. So we've done a lot over the last several months, but the goal was to address the pandemic and stop it in its tracks. Understand, what was happening, how people were getting, infected, and really try to get information, accurate information out as much as possible. It's been a real trying time. It's been devastating. We've lost so many people, so many families affected by it, and just their everyday living has been turned upside down. So in recent times, when we passed the budget earlier in July, the budget had a lot of heavy cuts to sanitation and the Parks Department. And because of that, we're getting a lot of calls and inquiries about trash overflowing, garbage bins, garbage everywhere, parks not being clean, garbage not being picked up timely, just all of those things. So we've been working with the Parks Department, the Friends of Four Parks Alliance, I Love the Bronx is Blooming, so many different Friends of Parks groups. And we've been cleaning up Claremont Park, Mullally, McCombs, Joyce Kilmer. We've been doing step streets. It's been a lot of work, but we also want to make sure that we remind our park goers to not only use the trash receptacles and garbage bins, but we really have to take care of our parks since they're so heavily used during this time.
Thank you so much for the update, Council Member. So let's get straight into the upcoming elections. Please remind us of the importance of the Black and Hispanic vote, especially in this election season.
So the Black and Hispanic vote has always been important. I think people need to be reminded of the importance of elections, particularly presidential elections. This November, we have the ability to get rid of Donald Trump, the most racist, misogynistic president that was ever elected in modern history. We have seen over the last 4 years This president denigrate women, seniors, LGBT New Yorkers, immigrant families, undocumented New Yorkers. He's used every effort to suppress the vote, to deny opportunities like Social Security and Medicaid and real programs that are safety nets for families across America. And he calls himself the greatest president. It's so untrue. And I think people are now outraged because they've seen with their own eyes what electing a president like Donald Trump has meant for our community and our nation. So people are waking up, and we need to be woke. We need to stay prepared. We need to stay ready because so much is on the line. We have to vote like everything matters because everything matters and everything is on the line. Our children's future, criminal justice reform. This is a president that caters to the big corporations, big banks, and NRA. He calls the NRA good people. That should tell you the type of leader he is. With the election in November of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, we have an opportunity to bring Democrats back to the White House, as we did years ago in 2008 with Barack Obama. I am proud to be a delegate for New York 13 in Northern Manhattan and the West Bronx, and we are using incredible leaders like our former First Lady, forever First Lady Michelle Obama, to really capture the message for Americans and New Yorkers. So New York has been a Democratic state for years, and that probably won't change, but numbers matter. People have to realize that your vote really does count. This is an administration that is trying every effort to suppress your right to vote. Today just happens to be the anniversary of the women's right to vote. The women's suffrage movement that started here in New York, upstate New York, that gave women the right to vote. Women, Black women, Latinas, Asian American women, Latinx. We all have to be a part of this conversation because it is our children, our babies, and our kids whose futures are on the line in this election.
Right. Thank you so much, Council Member. We heard Michelle Obama's State of the Nation.
Yes.
She was infuriated on the State of the Nation, and she actually said the quote, "We live in a nation that is deeply divided, and I'm a Black woman speaking at the Democratic Convention." So that is enough to solidify the fact that changes are coming. And, with Kamala Harris as the first Black VP female, I also wanted to hear your opinion on that. A lot of folks have strongly held opinions on Harris's record as a California prosecutor. Should she be held accountable for that as VP? And please give us your thoughts on that.
Right. So I think every elected official, you have a record of accomplishment, but you also have a record that you have to stand on and defend. And we as elected officials make very important decisions on behalf of our constituents that have a long-term impact. Some may agree, some may not agree. But one thing I appreciate about Joe Biden's decision is he recognizes the power of Black women. African-American women have led our democracy for generations. We have been the most disrespected, undervalued class of people in this country. Alabama, Black women elected Doug Jones to the U.S. Senate a few years ago, right? And so Black women have always come through. And now it's time to elect an African-American woman who happens to be qualified. When he made his announcement last week, I cried. I cried for me, for my daughters, for the little girls in our communities that dare to dream and dare to hope that they can see in their vice president themselves. They can look and see a Michelle Obama, a Tish James, a Kamala Harris, and see themselves and know, I too can do that. It is a gratifying moment for us in history as Black women and women of color. We are stepping up to positions that were never designed for us. We are shattering glass ceilings all over this country, and we are giving little girls hope. That is our job. And yes, I know Kamala Harris as a U.S. Senator, probably the second African-American U.S. Senator from the state of California, as well as her previous role of Attorney General, being a prosecutor, right? And focusing on criminal justice reform. She is a prosecutor. She is a woman of color, and she's a public servant. She has to go and stand on her record and defend it. But I do think that, she's not perfect. We can't judge her for every decision she's made. During that time that she served as U.S. Senator, I remind everyone that she has had a record of alternatives to incarceration, of focusing on re-entry services and holistic treatment for formerly incarcerated men and women. She's fought against the suppressing the vote and voter disenfranchisement. So I think while some may criticize her for her work as AG, if you look at her record during the U.S. Senate days, you can see that she's obviously been much more progressive. And I think that also speaks volumes to the fact that times are changing. Movements are happening. Black Lives Matter. We're protesting. We're demonstrating for a reason. We're seeing now Black men that are being assaulted by police. We're seeing police being assaulted. We're seeing Black on Black crime in communities of color. Like, all of this is happening for a reason, and we have to use it as a learning lesson, but it also has to be a call to attention and a call to action.
Right. Now, Councilmember, low voter turnout and voter suppression are huge concerns here in our borough, especially now with mail-in voting and the Postal Service crisis. Michelle Obama even addressed this in her keynote speech at the first night of the Democratic Convention. Councilmember, how are you and other elected officials ensuring that the Bronx has a fighting chance to equal voting this election?
So we are doing a lot on the ground, in the streets, grassroots efforts, outreach. First, we are promoting the Census 2020 because every New Yorker must be counted so we can access necessary federal dollars. The deadline was pushed up by this president, so we have until September 30th to get counted, but also voting, voter education, and voter registration. A lot of the efforts from the state legislators in Albany on early voting, which we have now in New York State, thank God, making sure that we encourage absentee voting, that you have to request your ballot and make sure you get it in time before the election, but also same-day registration. There's a lot of things that the state legislature can do and has been doing to really focus on getting people encouraged, engaged, and being a part of the process. We also have to remind those who are formerly incarcerated that you may have a criminal record, but you are still able to vote, because sometimes they don't tell you that you can vote because they don't want you to vote. Black and brown people need to be a part of this process because every decision made by leaders affects you every single day. It affects your household, your community, your block, your corner, and it matters. Young people need to be involved, and that's why we have civic engagement and efforts for young people to be registered early. They can pre-register as early as 17 years old, so when they turn 18, they will automatically be registered to vote. But there's a lot of things we're doing, but honestly, we have to take it to the streets. We have to meet residents where they are, at the salons, the barbershops, the bodegas, the beauty salons, the supermarkets, the churches. Now that everyone is starting to come outside, we have to have an active campaign to register voters. The deadline is 30 days before the election, so the deadline will be in early October to make sure that we get everyone registered to vote.
As your plans for candidate for borough president, what do you imagine the future of the Bronx could look like post-COVID-19?
So it's going to take us a while to get out of the post-COVID, 19, this pandemic that has really hit the Bronx in a real, negative way. We've lost so many people, older residents with underlying health conditions. I think moving the Bronx forward has to be a message of resiliency and strength. We have to have a plan. We have to address health disparities that residents faced pre-COVID, during COVID, they will face after COVID. We have to get people working again. 800,000 New Yorkers lost their jobs due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we have to get residents working again. We have to have a comprehensive plan on what the school reopening looks like next month. Parents are worried about sending their kids back to a building that's unsafe for themselves and their children. That is a real concern. We have to get back to the basics. We have to have a plan that invests in tenants. If we don't get rent relief, we have to provide all of the options for families to stay in their homes, like legal representation and right to counsel, and supporting them if they have to go to housing court. We have to build economic power and economic wealth in Black and brown communities, home ownership opportunities, community land trusts. We have to focus on worker co-ops. We have to build a job sector that focuses on tech, right? The tech industry is booming right now, and we have to get a plan for that in the Bronx. We have to take this borough to the next level and what I call the new renaissance. The Bronx has so much beauty, so much diversity. We are a beacon of diversity from all backgrounds and all walks of life. But if you look at the Bronx, there are many people that are struggling, some that are doing okay, and some that are doing far better. We have to level the playing field for everyone to have access to opportunity. So the plan for us as borough president is going to be very ambitious. It's going to have multiple layers, multiple stakeholders, because that's the only way you can get a plan done. You have to address all the issues. I say wraparound services because it's not just one issue, right? You can't talk about quality healthcare without talking about stable housing and quality education and jobs. So all of these things are relative and correlated and have to go hand in hand together.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Gibson, for your time. Before we go, how can your constituents get in touch with you and your office if they need help?
Sure. So our office remains closed to the public, unfortunately, as we prepare to reopen in September. But you can call our office number 718-588-7500, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. We're working remotely from home. Email is district16bronx@council.nyc.gov. You can also catch me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Vanessa L. Gibson, Councilmember Vanessa L. Gibson. Look me up, Google me, you'll find me. I'm all over. We have a lot of events coming up as we prepare to return students to school. We're going to be giving out book bags, school supplies. We're still cleaning parks on Meaningful Mondays with electeds and Parks Department. We have a lot of work to do, but I am very optimistic because the Bronx has been through a lot. We've had our darkest days where we have literally hit rock bottom, but we have gotten back up. We have stood strong and tall, and we have survived. And there's no time like the present to show the resiliency of the Bronx than it is during this COVID-19 pandemic. So stay strong, Bronx residents. We are all in this together. This is a little bit of a setback, but every setback is preparation for a comeback. And we're going to come back stronger like never before. So I look forward to working with all of you. Reach out to us. We're happy to work with you and help you in any way we can.
Nothing like that Bronx strength and resilience.
Yes.
Thank you, Councilmember Gibson. We'll be right back, folks. Welcome back. The fight for Black lives in the Bronx and nationally has not ended for our next guests. They've been named number 9 on the City and State's Bronx Power 50 list, and they've protested and fought against the wrongful deaths of Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, and many others. Most recently, George Floyd's death in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Joining us now are Chivona and Newsome of Black Lives Matter, Greater New York. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Let me just start by saying y'all are really about that life. Y'all are about it, and you're both out here. I've seen you at protests in the field, of course, but also just in community providing support and resources to people in our borough. To start, tell us about your ongoing fight for Black lives and how your mobilizing has taken shape, not only in just protesting, but in community outreach programs here in the Bronx, especially through COVID-19.
Well, we have to start with COVID-19, and of course, our heart goes out to all the families of the Bronx who had become, our home became the epicenter. And our organization foresaw this. We reached out as soon as pause in place came out. We reached out to Governor Cuomo. We asked for additional resources, for monies to be given to cure violence organizations because we foresaw that the NYPD couldn't handle it. We asked for more testing sites. But in the interim, while asking and waiting, our people were starving. So we began the People's Food Program, and we raised about 40 or 50K throughout the whole duration of the campaign, and we are still currently feeding people. We fed about 6,000 Bronx residents door to door because you should not have to risk getting COVID to eat. So that's a big part of our mutual aid. And since then, we've helped other places outside of the Bronx as well by contributing.
Yeah, definitely. We have there's so much that we've done over the years, but it's hard for me to look past the last 4 or 5 months. So, for instance, when George Floyd's tape aired, Black Lives Matter Minnesota reached out to us and were like, we're doing a protest. We want you to help us launch it nationally, right? So within 2 hours, we shared what do you call those things?
The
Invite. We shared an invite, and we had 10 people sign up to watch the live feed. And then when we started that, the feds, or the powers that be, kept people from viewing this. They kept interrupting the link. So within a day of that, we were on our way to Minnesota. We actually came out to LA and participated in the sit-in in front of their mayor, Mayor Garcetti's house, and they successfully were successful in actions to defund the police. We fought for families in New Jersey. We fought for a ballot initiative in Florida. We campaigned for Stacey Abrams in Georgia. So when we start talking about mobilizing, we've been marching for a long time, but really what people have to look beyond to and see is the importance of organizing. We've been organizing, you know what I mean? Organizing the people, moving the people, pushing forward campaigns. And I think that's something that our folks would know. And most importantly, you know, we're in the Bronx, heavy, feeding people, fighting for people, getting arrested, right on, getting arrested because cops are enforcing racist social distancing practices. Cops come through our neighborhoods to break up block parties like the Gestapo, like an army. We put our lives on the line and shut them down. And 2 people at times have backed down 30, 40 cops. So it's like, it's at home and it's abroad as well.
Thank you both. I wanted to lay out that the Black Lives Matter Greater New York movement is not affiliated with the global network. Could you just clarify that? You're not affiliated with George Soros. How do you operate differently?
The way we operate differently is all of our funding comes from people. We are grassroots at our heart. So thank you to everyone who's given on PayPal, to our website, Cash App, Venmo, whatever. I'm not going to name drop all of them. Mm-hmm. But as a core of it and why we founded this organization, we needed radical revolutionaries in the fight for Black liberation. We needed to get this oppressive government's foot off of our neck. And Global, at the height of its inception, Black Lives Matter Global, they had about 33 chapters. They were using their talents and their wealthy donors to fund arts and plays and books. So right now they're about down to 16 official chapters. We are not a part of that. We share a different mission statement. We want radical change. We want it now. And we're joined by over 400 unaffiliated chapters throughout the world.
We are about Black liberation, first and foremost. We talk about Black liberation. We talk about our communities. Of course, that includes our brown brothers and sisters, some of whom respect and honor their African heritage. Some don't. We got to educate a lot of people, right? But, you know, as far as us and Black Lives Matter Global goes, we've never donated to a political campaign, right? People send us money, it comes to us. And it started out like real hardcore grassroots. And then now some A-list celebrities have said, you know what? We know the difference between Black Lives Matter Global and Black Lives Matter Greater New York. But we kind of like Black Lives Matter Greater New York. So we've had Rihanna donate money to us, Public Enemy, right? Chuck D, Public Enemy. They created, exactly. They've created a Public Enemy / Black Lives Matter Greater New York t-shirt that they're launching, right? Nick Cannon has always been with us. So some celebrity have really, respected us. Idris Elba, his partner, they rocked with us. So, you know, we're growing. People like our particular brand of activism. Like, this isn't little rich kids or really smart people who believe in philosophies and, you know, and then like, oh, I speak for all Black people. No, you're talking to people who are from 163rd and Sheridan Avenue. You understand? Like, people who are really from our neighborhoods who spend, you see us, you know, we travel, but next week we'll be in Webster Projects, right? Giving out book bags. Like, we are really in the streets helping our people. And that's why, you know, you got the government, politicians be hating on us. You got cops be hating on us. You got other activists be hating on us. But the problem is we are in the streets, F with us in a real major way. And until they get in the streets and start doing this work, they can't break that connection. So they have to respect it.
Absolutely.
Word. Let's talk about the Black vote. Donald Trump has stated that MAGA loves Black people, and Joe Biden stated that you ain't Black if you don't vote Biden. And now he selected the first Black in this race. Many folks have strongly held opinions on Harris's record as a California prosecutor. What are your thoughts on the upcoming elections and the Biden-Harris ticket?
I'm going to try and speak from this point to be unbiased. So to look at it from a real political aspect. First, we need to start with truths. Donald Trump does not love Black people. He actually released one of his MAGA night slogans in the way he speaks to his base. Well, I was out in Minneapolis. I was in fear of my life. Our team was, 10 members of us were on the run because of how Donald Trump incites racism. So that's wrong, for one. Now, with the Kamala and the Biden ticket, it's not what we want it for. And I think people need to understand, everyone who was around to see that first Obama 2007, 2008 election, we are not fired up. We are not ready to go, but we have to do what's in the best interest of our people. And it's a very tough decision because Joe Biden has a very checkered past, as well as Ms. Kamala Harris, VP nominee, having a checkered past as a top cop. But we have to understand what is going to happen to our community. What is going to happen by community at this time, not only the Bronx, where we need the most help, we have the most poverty, we have the most asthma rates. When I say community, I mean America as a whole. Can we continue on this divide? Can we continue with the racism and the blood in the streets? Or can we, it might not be the candidates we necessarily wanted. Can they work with us and adopt? But I want your viewership and all people to know we have to retain our power. Just because Donald Trump is evil and we hate him, what is the Biden-Harris ticket going to promise our community? Are they going to fight environmental injustice, mass incarceration, housing, and all of the woes that plague people who look like you and me? So I think it's still time. It's about 70-something days out until the general election. We need to save the post office, of course, because he's feeling he's going to lose and he's trying to gut that. But we need a real clear and concise plan from the Democratic candidates. I wish our community, which the Bronx has one of the strongest Democratic counties in the whole entire country, we need to demand our power. We know that Black women elect Democratic presidents. We know that just as white women have voted for Donald Trump. So we need to harness our vote, and we need executive orders and legislations to uplift our community, no matter who's president, even though it's a big F Donald Trump and he needs to leave office.
Absolutely. And Hawk, I wanted to ask a specific question to you. Back in 2016, you led an initiative stating, "I ain't voting till Black Lives Matter." Do you still hold the same feelings today? And what can this election mean for Black and brown people here in the Bronx?
You really have to understand that like a lot of times I've been the face of this organization, but it's always been us who have been laying down the plans. You know, it's just Chivona's a brilliant nuts and bolts person. So she was always working behind the scenes, getting things done. And now she stepped out into the forefront. People can truly appreciate how special this woman is. I don't really mean that. My mother would get mad if I didn't say that type of stuff. No. But realistically, I feel like we need to show up and vote Donald Trump out. But I can't force people to vote. I can inspire people to vote. And if these people were to be inspired, I'd have to be inspired myself, right? Now, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are very uninspiring. Think about how lackluster they have to be if people know that Donald Trump is Satan in a suit, and they're still like, I don't know if I'm going to show out to vote. Why? Why is that? Why don't people want to go out and vote for these Democrats? Because people see these Democrats as tools of white supremacy, the same way that they see Donald Trump as a tool of white supremacy. And what are they promising that are different? Look at Joe Biden's platform, and you'll see that he's listened to activists only in instances where we fought and had legislation passed. So he's incorporated that into his campaign. What's radical in his campaign? What's going to inspire Bernie people? What's going to inspire the Black Lives Matter, the organizers, those people who are marching around shaping the laws of this country? What's going to inspire them to get out and vote? But then you have to take a step back and think about it from a real macro level, right? The Bronx is burning. We're the unhealthiest county in New York City. Our educational system sucks. The streets are not safe. And I'm not saying we need more police. We need more programs to stop people from killing each other. Our neighborhoods are dirty. There's homelessness everywhere. So who do we look at? We look at the Ruben Diaz's, right? We look at both of them. We can look at these city council members, right? We can look at these assembly members, right, who are supposed to be like us, that make all of these promises, but how have they helped the Bronx? And these are Democrats to their core. The Bronx voted for Obama stronger than any county in the country. And we still suffering. So how am I go out there and be like, these Democrats gonna make your life right, when the people of the Bronx can't even get treated right by the Democratic Party? Like, they gotta do more. They gotta be radical, not when it's cool to be radical, but radical consistently. And that's what we believe in. Look at AOC. What is AOC really doing in the Bronx? That's why people be like, screw the Democratic Party. And I be like, yo, I'm with you, but we gotta get Trump out. But they got to give us something to hold on to. They got to give us something to give to people so we can make the people go out and vote.
Now, Chivona, speaking of those radical ideas, while running for Congress in District 15, you developed a list of demands as part of the Black Act back in June, with calls against structural racism within the police, housing, and education systems. So far, the NYPD has been defunded. Are you satisfied with the cut? And what else do you call for within the Black Act? What's next?
I would love to take credit for that full plan, but the whole BLM Greater New York, as well as a think tank of team members around the country, came together on that. After we had gotten back from the unfortunate murder site of George Floyd in Minneapolis, we just locked in to like one of our team members' like basements of their home with pillows and pizza, and just thanks to everyone who's put in that. And that is a living, breathing document. So any organizers or people watching this feel as though we may have missed something, please reach out. I think that the passing of some of the laws, because it's like a 24-point piece of legislation, the passing of some of those laws, it shows how quickly things can change. Our people have been pacified for years and being told to wait, being told it's going to take time, not this administration. And we've seen legislation happen in about 2 weeks. We had a 25,000 person march in Times Square, which de Blasio tried to shut down and kill pedestrian traffic. But we are activists. We don't need a permit to do things. So we bust that open and unleashed our legislative package. Now, regarding your question about defunding the police, it's bull. I just want everybody to know what defunding the police means. First of all, that means taking that money, that $11 billion budget, and giving it to communities like ours, putting that money into education, putting that money into cure violence organizations, which have a history of stopping crimes in the community, because we don't need more police, having more social workers in schools, because schools right now is just a stepping stone on the way to the school to prison pipeline. So we need to invest in these. And we've seen that a lot of city council members who've had the power to vote and power to make true change, that bill, is someone who's formerly in finance and who holds a degree in economics, is full of crap. It's not a real defunding of the police, and we need something more aggressive. Just moving money around, moving school safety officers, it's just a basic economics trip. It's like no more than money laundering, actually. What they're doing is putting money in shell corps, or putting it offshore, and that's what the NYPD did. I am unsatisfied with it, but shout out to everyone who was down at Abolition Park, who took a real stand, people who were hurt, who were beaten just because they believed, because it was like bodegas there, it was libraries there, it was people doing yoga there. So no matter how the media tends to portray Abolition Park and people standing for the defunding of the police, they're heroes, but we have to keep fighting. So the next budget, or until we can get some real legislation, have some real money diverted, we can't let up on this fight. That's why I'm encouraged to see sites like Justice for George on Instagram, sites like our own and our other allies posting where you can protest every day. As long as we stick to the streets, we'll get early results. This is the biggest civil rights movement we've ever seen. It took Martin Luther King 4 years to get his voting rights passed, and we had 4 pieces of legislation in under a month. Now, this is because of people's unrest. We take no credit. This is a collective that's happening around the world, but it happened rather quickly. Repealing 50A, which hid officers' misconduct, the chokehold ban, all these things we've been working on for half of a decade. But because everyone took to the streets in the Bronx, around the city, around the world, we see how quickly things can change. So I hope once the world returns to normal and this whole COVID pandemic is behind us, I hope that people still continue to know how powerful they are and know that we can have full liberation. We don't have to wait another 400 years to be free.
How can people stay connected with you and support the Black Lives Matter Greater New York movement? Please leave us with a message for the people of the Bronx as well.
Well, they can locate us on BLM Greater NY on Instagram. His personal is hawk.newsome on Instagram. Mine is New York / Bonnie on Instagram and Twitter. It's VONNI and Chivona Newsome. You can search me on any of these platforms. But I think I would like to impart, and I know Hawk has some closing words. Like, we are from the Bronx. We have endured the crack era. We've endured the burnouts. We've endured the worst of what this nation has tried to throw at us, and we continue to stand strong. There's a better way for us. We can eliminate poverty. We can eradicate evictions. We can have good housing. We don't have to settle for this. We don't need anyone to save us. We have the power here in the Bronx to save ourselves.
I mean, what can I add to that other than whatever racist, systemic racist wall, whatever capitalistic, classist wall they put in front of our people, we are going to run through it, go over it, or go around us. And to my people of the Bronx, if you ever need us, just go up to the roof and say, yeah,
Yeah.
and we'll be right there.
Thank you so much. Much respect to you and the Black Lives Matter Greater New York movement. Thank you for following in your parents' footsteps of doing this work. Much respect to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We'll be right back with Open BxRx.
With coronavirus spreading, people at higher risk must take extra precautions. You're at higher risk if you're over 65 or if you have an underlying medical condition. Please visit coronavirus.gov for more information.
Welcome back. With September only a few weeks away, city officials are creating a plan to reopen schools for New York City's 1.1 million public school students. To combat these reopening plans and demand health justice in schools, a group of New York City teachers are fighting for more than just schools through the movement of rank and file educators, or MORE Caucus. Joining us now to discuss is Aixa Rodriguez. She is a Bronx teacher and representative of the MORE Caucus. Thank you so much for joining us today, Aixa.
Hi, it's great to be here. I appreciate you bringing me on.
Of course. So just to start, please tell us about yourself as a Bronx educator and about the MORE Caucus.
Oh, so myself, I am an ESL teacher. Most of my career has been in the Bronx. And right now I'm in a school in Manhattan. Still teaching ESL, still teaching a diverse group of students from all over the world. I'm born and raised in the Bronx, so it's in my blood. I run a Facebook group called Bronx Educators United for Justice, and I'm on the steering committee of MORE, which is the Movement of Rank and File Educators. It is what the Chicago Teachers Union is, CTU core, that group. It's the one for New York. We have sister caucuses around the country. We are social justice oriented caucus groups in the UFT or in the different unions. And we are about looking at more than just our contract and what it's about, because our teaching experience, our working conditions actually are what the kids are experiencing as they learn. So there has to be an understanding of seeing the social justice in how things happen in our job. It's not just about our paycheck.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing more, Aixa. This week, Mayor de Blasio and Chancellor Carranza have continuously assured educators and parents that New York City schools will be safe and ready to reopen in just 3 weeks. What are your thoughts on their plans?
Super ambitious and unrealistic, completely unrealistic. And we're seeing the results of that as, people who are normally very conservative are rising up. We're seeing that in District 15, but prior to that, 6 principals in my building, the Martin Luther King campus, right next to Lincoln Center, right next to LaGuardia, were like, our school only gets recycled air. We have no windows. We cannot comply. So, our plans have to be realistic, and we don't feel as if these things are being taken seriously. We feel as if there's a rush, a push. And the reality is this is not going to be a normal year, and we need to go slowly and carefully. We need to explore all options. We need to throw the box out and think not outside of the box, think without the box is what we need to think. And that we have beautiful, lovely gardens, botanical gardens and zoos. We have museums, we have parks. And, if you want to start the year off right, please respect our children's social and emotional health. And start it off to get them to bond. It doesn't have to be all academics all the time. Bonding increases attention, a feeling of wellness, and it feels like you want to be there, and then you pay attention more, because they're pushing a hybrid, which means the kids are going to be learning online anyway. Right. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me, but we feel like they're rushing and that they're ignoring serious issues.
I'm very curious, do teachers and parents have any input at all with these plans? And have you received things like questionnaires to express your concerns and give suggestions for the plans?
So MORE has parent allies in CECs and in groups, PTAs and SLTs, and they are the ones who have been coming to us saying, why are we getting these really badly worded surveys? And because most of our parents are smart and won't be taken advantage of, they asked these questions and they showed us what they were getting. We saw both sides. We do not like the way the surveys were written. We don't feel as if it allowed parents to have access to the real information. Some people felt as if they were being told things, not asked. So this is what we're doing, punto final. Instead of like, what are your concerns? What are your needs for your family?
Right.
You know, what can we do to set up something that will work for your schedule? Most parents were complaining that 2 days out of the week is not going to let them have a job. So it's unrealistic. And then if they're going to try to have childcare, and they're going to have to plan it for a whole week, because what if the kid is sick? You really can't plan for 3 days out of the week. It's unrealistic and it's unfair to these parents. So that was what we got told. And the teachers are right along with it. A lot of us teachers are also parents.
Right, exactly. And that's not really being considered. You know, childcare when it comes to remote learning has been very difficult for both parents and teachers that have kids as well. So as a teacher, I wanted to ask you, what are some of the challenges you face in regards to sanitation that make you feel unsafe about bringing children back to school in September?
Well, the custodians that reached out to us noticed that we opened our mouths and everybody came to us, please help us get our word out.
Yeah.
The custodians don't have enough money, no funding for extra hours that they need, not enough staffing. They can't do it alone. Not enough PPE, not enough, a lot of stuff. So the reality is they can't do it all. And they don't wipe our tables. The teachers wipe our tables. They don't wipe desks and chairs and all that. They don't do this. And these electrostatic sprayers, they need to be charged for 2 hours. And you know, you can't send a man who's trying to do like 2 different floors of a large building with 1 pack electrostatic sprayer and expect him to cover everything. He's going to get the most important things. And CEC parents who have walked through with their superintendents have noticed that it's only going to be the generic doors and the generic bookcases. That nothing is going to be in the nitty-gritty covered. So, you know, the toys and other things that the kids interact with may not be ever, you know, disinfected in any way, shape, or form. So we're, you know, basing this need for sanitation on this idea that we're going to put the whole entire burden of opening up the schools on the backs of these custodians. We know who these people are, right? These are our grandmothers, our grandfathers. These are people in our communities that keep our schools working.
Yes.
And many of them are people of color. So we don't have enough anything. And please telling me a month that they bought a month of Clorox wipes is going to help me. I almost go through a whole thing of Clorox wipes with 1 art project. Okay, so it's not a joke. And I will end up paying, the teachers will end up paying for what we use in our classroom anyway. The boards don't get wiped, tables don't get wiped. That's not part of the custodian's job. It's going to fall on us. And so there's a lot of questions about whether or not this is hygiene theater, where we try to make it seem as if something is being done. Everybody calm down. It's a pandemic. Here is a wipey. No.
Right.
No. If you can't get your own Lysol in the store, how am I supposed to get it for my classroom? Because I know that my principals hardly want to give me copy paper. But, you know, teachers also spread germs too. And like I told you before when we first met you, my grandmother passed with COVID. My mother was infected. I turned out to have antibodies, and had we not shut down the schools, I would have been in the classroom, having been infected, asymptomatic, teaching kids from 5 boroughs, from at least 3 or 4 different nationalities, African, Mexican, Dominican, Bangladeshi, in my classroom.
Right.
So I could have affected all of those communities in all of those boroughs. So the reality is that we need to talk about how science works, how infection works. And it's not just the kids who are dirty and the kids who are dirty. Yeah, they got germs. They put Taki dust on their fingers, and I could tell where they touched in my classroom. So I know that they got germs, but so do we. And we have families back and forth. We're all human beings. So the reality is that we need to listen to the parents, listen to the kids, because some of them are real smart, and they'll tell you exactly what's going on.
That's true. Aixa, in a press conference, Governor Andrew Cuomo stated, quote, "If something happens and there's a spread, then the state will step in and we will close the school." What are your thoughts on this quote?
the word something happens are people. I would like the language that is being used by elected officials to be cleansed and be people first. Because when you continue to say, oh, if it fails, if it doesn't work, those failures, those doesn't work, those oops, those outbreaks are people, are families, they're deaths. And in the case of, people who are recovering from COVID, they also happen to, many of them have lingering results, lingering impacts of the infection. My mother is still recovering, and she still has lingering impact. I'm praising God that it's not as bad as some other people, but the reality is there's no oops, there's no any of this. Nobody is disposable, nobody is expendable, nobody should be referred to like that. When emergency hits, it's an emergency. When people need to be protected, they need to be protected. And the language that is being used, very sanitized, very good for press, very good, for a soundbite. But when I hear that some people will, oops, be in that donut hole and fall through the cracks. That's not cool.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. And it's true. They should say if deaths happen, because that's really what he's trying to say there in that soundbite. I also wanted to ask, the MORE Caucus's health justice agenda is calling for 3 non-negotiable demands. Can you share those demands with us?
Oh, one is definitely community empowerment. I think that goes, beyond everything. You started with the conversation about, do parents have any access to an input and et cetera, and many parents don't feel like they do. We're not being listened to, and that's a serious concern, because then you're not going to hear what needs to be done because you're not listening, right? So, community voice, super important, and we want transparency. We want all of the employees in the public system, including bus drivers, cafeteria workers, all of them, their voices need to be heard as well. We really want physical health to be protected. We've already discussed all the reasons why. And we want space for children, like really prioritize the children, period. The emotional health, super important. And respecting parents' choice. I think people are feeling overwhelmed and people are feeling rushed, and they're not feeling like they're getting the correct information. So how do you make an informed choice if you're not being told all these things? We have parents who we have to give translations to in multiple different languages to explain that a return to school is not 5 days a week. Sometimes that information doesn't get through. It doesn't get filtered. They go, school started, boom.
Yep.
So we want that respect as professionals to be able to care for our students, and the parents be able to say, listen, my kid has gone through a lot. We've had these deaths. We need social workers. We need counselors. That's what we need.
Now, how can people support the MORE Caucus and learn more about these health justice demands?
So we have a website that we set up called healthjusticeagenda.squarespace.com. So you can check it out, see how we've developed this. It's a while. This was a long process. We welcome members who are teachers, who are educators, and that includes paras to join MORE. But we also have an affiliate membership. So we have been really getting some active parents and other supporters to join MORE as affiliate members. We are listening and we are learning from our CEC parents, people who are actually doing the real work, connecting all the pieces of the DOE. We also invite parents to get actively involved with their PTA, with their SLT. They don't have to get just involved with us, and get involved and voice yourself.
Thank you so much, Aixa, for joining us today.
No problem. I'm grateful to be here.
Thank you. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The Educational Video Center is an award-winning nonprofit media organization dedicated to teaching documentary filmmaking to young people. Joining us now to tell us more and invite you to an ongoing virtual documentary and discussion screening called Docs and Dialogue are Ambreen Qureshi, Executive Director of the Educational Video Center, and Raelene Holmes-Andrews, alumni. Welcome. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you, Sonyi. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. We're excited to share the work that EVC does with BronxNet and the BronxNet community and the entire borough, right? So EVC actually has a long history in the Bronx, right? The idea of putting cameras in the hands of young people was conceived in the Bronx when our founder in the early 80s was working on a documentary film. And then he just, gave the cameras to the young people, and just the stories and perspectives that they brought to the film was just really powerful, and that sparked the idea. And look, 35 years later, right? And so EVC, over 3 decades, we've been committed to equity in storytelling, and teaching high school students how to collaboratively film documentary films, doing the research, the production, post-production about social justice issues that are impacting them and their communities, right? And over the last 35 years, we've served over 27,000 young people, right? Shared our curriculum with over 15,000 practitioners worldwide, directly trained over 1,100 teachers, and our incredible youth producers have produced over 200 really high quality documentary films about systemic issues and structural racism. And these films have gone on to win over 130 awards, including 2 White House honors and an Emmy, right? So, I mean, the quality and the authenticity of the work that our youth produces over the years is just really impressive. And we work with incredible young people like Raelene, right? And so she's not just an alum, but she'll tell you more about her experiences at EVC.
Yes, Raelene, as an alumnus of the EVC, what are some of the programs you've participated in, and what skills do students get the opportunity to learn?
The first program that I participated in was our youth documentary workshop, which we like to call YDW, which is a 15-week after-school program that introduces high school students to the fundamentals of documentary filmmaking. So students earn academic credit upon completion of the program. And we're also in partner with learning to work programs around New York City that are inside schools. Students learn critical literacy skills, post-production, production, social emotional development. They learn how to respect everybody else's opinions, civic engagement. They meet with elected officials, professionals to interview them, to put them in their film. I've also participated in our new media arts program. That one is a different ballpark. So it's a 12-week after-school program where students remix archival footage from EVC. So older documentaries that were done back in like the 80s, they'll remix it and bring it back to life. And they create an interactive website. They also incorporate some photography into that as well. I've also done our professional development programs, and that's where we train teachers how to integrate EVC's approach and curriculum into their classrooms so that we could serve even more young people. And I've assisted in our teaching training programs as a teaching assistant in classrooms too.
Wow, talk about coming full circle, right, at the EVC. Thank you so much for sharing that. I wanted to ask, Ambreen, how have the students been working through COVID-19? I know in-person workshops have, of course, been suspended and programs were changed. How are students encouraged to engage in remote documentary filmmaking?
Yeah, that's a great question. We pivoted very quickly to converting all of our programs into online remote learning workshops, and it's been going well, but not without challenges, right, Sonyi, right? Because COVID-19 has sort of laid bare inequities, in really difficult ways, right? And so our students, some students don't have access to technology. Some students, are forced to take care of younger siblings because their parents have to work as essential workers, right? So it's been really challenging, and what we've been doing is just sort of meeting students where they're at, right? That's kind of classic EVC, approach that we've just been doing, we've been doubling down on that, right? Creating safe spaces, finding creative solutions, right? And just giving students an outlet to sort of process, this traumatic experience that we're all going through, and just, finding community and talking to people and staying connected, right? And unfortunately, digital media production can be done remotely and digitally, right? So students are now, working from home with their cell phones as opposed to the cameras that we have, but we can do editing, right, online together collectively. And, our students are now doing streaming interviews rather than street interviews, right? And so they're really creative, and they're finding, ways to tell their stories because they want to be heard, right? This is really impacting them, and they just want to, find an outlet, right? And so that's what we're doing, right?
Absolutely. I had the joy of virtually meeting and connecting with some of the EVC youth as a guest speaker at one of the events that were going on. One of the youth producers, Kayla, enthusiastically shared an incredible project that she was a part of. It's called The Pandemic from School to Prison, and that's part of the EVC. It explored the injustices in the incarceration and education systems, and I found that this project really exhibited not only how these young filmmakers adapted to create the film, but also how they adapted as students, living and learning in quarantine. Can you tell us more about projects like this one and other projects that students have submitted through these tough times?
Sure, that's a great question, Sonyi, right? And so, our students have really, across all of our programs, really wanted to document COVID, right? And sort of how it's affecting their lived experiences, but also connecting that to systemic violence, right? And structural racism and systemic, inequities, right? And just sort of connecting their personal experiences to the larger picture, right? And so we talk about EVC, about sort of zooming in onto students' lived experiences, but then zooming out, right? Just sort of connect it to the structures at play, right? Because not the structure and systemic violence isn't always visible to folks, right? And so that's really been a priority for our students, right? And so students, have been documenting, education and juvenile justice inequity for years at EVC, right? And especially now under COVID, right? And so one of our workshops in the spring produced a documentary called Quarantines, right? On essential workers, which include Black Lives Matter protesters, right? Which is a really interesting framing that I hadn't seen anyone else sort of document, right? Another group did a film, on media, right? And how that affects mental health. The film was called Living with the Enemy, Media, Mental Health, and Me. And they interviewed Bronx City Council member Richie Torres as well as part of their research, right? As well as family members, right? So we really democratize knowledge creation and storytelling at EVC. And so many of our students interviewed themselves, their friends, their family members, right? And so not just, elected officials and other experts as well, right?
I think it's so amazing and absolutely important to hear the youth in our communities and their perspectives through this time. And I'm so glad that the EVC is providing that platform and those resources for these students to put that work out there. So thank you. I also wanted to learn about the Docs and Dialogue event that you're inviting folks to. Raelene may be able to speak on that. What will be featured and how can people participate?
Sure. So Docs and Dialogue happens on the last Thursday of each month on Zoom. Our next screening is Thursday, August 27th from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. We will be screening a youth-produced documentary on racial inequities in healthcare, which is very timely given the stark inequities of COVID-19. This film is going to be called Colors of Health, Unequal Care in New York City. People can register on Eventbrite. The event is free and open to the public. You can find the link on our homepage at evc.org.
Thank you, Raelene. Before we go, Raelene, as a former student turned teacher, what would you say is the impact of giving underserved youth an opportunity to tell stories and create documentaries from their perspectives?
Oh, it's everything. It is everything to me. I can say as a student, I gained a lot of confidence. I'm okay with public speaking. I'm all right with listening and talking to random strangers on the street to get their opinions on issues that matter. As soon as I gained the ability to tell my story or tell a story in a creative way, it opened doors for me and my family as well to get involved. Civic engagement, that's another thing that we stress at EVC. Talk to your leaders in your community, attend community meetings, voice your opinions, network, screen your work everywhere, do your research, have it on hand so that you can raise awareness. These are things that young people in underserved communities can do to get their voices heard. And sometimes they don't know that their voices are powerful. So I'm grateful for helping to guide them through using it.
Ambreen, before we go, how can people support the Educational Video Center and stay connected with you all?
Yes, that's a great question, right? So folks can join our mailing list through our website, which is evc.org, right? evc.org, right? You can follow us on social media, on Facebook and on Instagram. Our handle is just simply Educational Video Center, no spaces, right? On Twitter, it's, at E_V_C, right? You can find all the links on our website. You can also donate if you'd like, if you can, through our website, right? You can also donate by texting EVCDD to 44321.
Thank you so much for your time and sharing more about the EVC. We look forward to connecting with you more and having the community go out and see the next Docs and Dialogue event.
Thank you so much, Sonyi.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Again, folks, the next EVC Docs and Dialogues Colors of Health event will be taking place on Thursday, August 27th from 6 to 7 p.m. That's all for our show today. Thank you for tuning in to Open BxRx. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, wishing you and your family safety and wellness now and always.